Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Night Crew, how you can help owls and how they can help you. I'm Ann Shellman. I am the coordinator for the UC Master Gardener program in Stanislaus County. Master Gardener programs are run throughout the state at local cooperative extension offices. So if you have any questions that are garden related, feel free to reach out to that local cooperative extension. And also, if you are a master gardener, thank you for joining us as well. We hope you enjoy this presentation. A little bit about us. Master gardeners don't know everything, but we do try our best to help you. Our mission is to extend research-based information on horticulture, pest management, and sustainable landscape practices to the public. And about 3 months after this presentation, you'll get a survey. Please fill it out to the best of your ability. It takes just a moment, and it will help us grow the quality of our program. If you are not already in touch with us, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, sign up for our newsletter. All of this information will come to you via email. So without further ado, I am going to go ahead and introduce our speaker. Mike Azevedo was as the county coordinator for Santa Clara County and the California Bluebird Recovery Program since 2009. Because of Mike, I saw my first bluebird a couple weeks ago. And before that, I'd always thought we don't have bluebirds in California. I've never seen one, but it's really about knowing what to look for. Mike has a list of credits to his name. He is doing amazing work trying to help recover bluebirds. Not only that, he works on different projects. He is concerned about habitat loss and the different issues that are happening with the loss of birds. And he has a Facebook page, the California Bluebird Recovery Program, that you can go on and follow him. And so now we are going to go ahead and have Mike share his page. And
Okay.
while you're doing that, I see we've got people from Yolo, Placer, Beverly Hills, Eagle Rock, Bodega Bay, Rockland, Riverside County, Los Angeles, Houston, California. And this is great. And so, Mike, why don't you go ahead and get started? Is there anything I can do to help you, or is everything set here?
Um, let's see. I'm
I
trying.
see I see a couple of screens.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is I have um, it's a bunch of links and things like that, but now I can't seem to copy and paste. So everything seems to be failing for me right now.
Uh-oh.
I wonder. So yeah, I don't. I guess the chat really still isn't working. I don't know what that's all.
No, the chat isn't going to work. My apologies. I would just go ahead and share your screen with the presentation and just go from there.
Yeah.
And the links I can share with everybody later through email.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good deal. So,
And right
my guys,
now I'm seeing the little night crew with a bunch of things
the
underneath.
night crew. Yeah, a bunch of little barn owl owlets is what you're seeing. Uh,
But also there's like, it looks like there's 3 screens behind it that are shared. I think if you got rid of those, it would.
maybe I shared my you know I think what I must have done was shared my screen. Let me try this again. Um,
We
so
just want to share the one.
yeah, of course. Share.
And thanks to everybody for joining us from all
Does that
over.
look
And
right?
here we go. Okay, great.
All right. Good deal. All right. So anyway, again, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, and Ann will, or in the question and answer, and Ann will go ahead and be monitoring that. And at the end, we'll do all the questions. So obviously, there is a day crew in the terms of hawks and other animals that go after rodents and things like that. And then there is the night crew. And these are birds that we don't even really see very often. And so it's important that we remember just how important they are. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today is a whole bunch of stuff. And if you're thinking that I'm going to ask you to put a barn owl box in your backyard, that's actually not the case. And the deal is that barn owl boxes are not for everywhere. There are a lot of barn owl boxes that have been put up in places that they're never going to get used. I'm not expecting everyone to go and put a barn owl box just anywhere. But by the time we're done with this, you will know what would probably be a good location to put a barn owl box versus what would be actually a bad location to put a barn owl box. So it's not for every backyard, but you may actually know of a good place to put a barn owl box. And that's the whole idea is we want everyone to be aware of just how important owls are, why you'd want to put barn owl boxes up, and where it would make sense to put them. Um, so then also, when is it a great idea to have an owl box? Because it's not always a great idea. And we're going to talk about the some of the things don't want to call them negatives, but the things that would dissuade you ordinarily if you knew what you're doing from putting up an owl box. And then that's the same thing. Why are owls important to us? That's actually just a question we're going to be answering today. And so I want to start off by introducing you to someone. Sadly, Steve Simmons died in 2020. But Steve Simmons was our Merced County coordinator for the California Bluebird Recovery Program. And by the way, what the California Bluebird Recovery Program is here to do is to try and make you successful in using nest boxes. So people often come to us and say, oh, well, you're telling us all about nest boxes. Can you tell us where to get the nest boxes? And see, that's not actually really what we do. We do have people that make nest boxes and stuff like that, but that's not really what we're here for. We're here to help you how to use them so that they're successful. So that instead of putting up a nest box that never ever gets used, we want you to know where you're going to put them so that they do get used correctly. So Steve was our Merced County coordinator, and he was a woodshop teacher for a high school. And the cool thing was that he came upon a source of wood in terms of there were grape boxes, the boxes used to haul grapes around. And when those boxes would get old and dilapidated, they still had a lot of good wood in them, but they weren't really good for hauling grapes. And so he was able to take those boxes and take them apart and then use the wood to create barn owl boxes and other nest boxes. And so this was great because what he ended up doing was he took his kids, his students, and he had them actually make nest boxes, and then they created a business where they sold the nest boxes. They were used for scholarships. They were used for for the benefit of the school and things like that. And so he was able to make kind of a business out of it, but the kids were in charge of the business. And so for a number of reasons, it was a great thing that he was able to do. And he had hundreds of nest boxes up of any different kind. There's like 20 different bird species in California that use nest boxes of one kind or another. And if they were in Merced, Steve had part in their reproduction. So he had a lot of boxes up, and that was important because Steve was a bird bander. If you look around his neck, there's a necklace, and that necklace is covered in bird bands of all different kinds. He was able to literally to band a barn owl, and then the next, an hour later, he's banding bluebirds. He literally was able to band pretty much everything he came across, which is great. So, and he was a master bander, and he was able to have people under him and stuff like that. So everything he did was he was able to every bird he came across he was able to band, and therefore he was able to do science. And because he was able to look at the all these birds that are coming through, and he was able to see where they came from. If they were banded, he could literally figure out where they had originated, and so he was able to use that in designing nest boxes because he was able to figure out what nest box designs were more successful. And this was especially important for barn owl boxes because there are a lot of designs of barn owl boxes out there, and unfortunately, many of them are crap. They just aren't very good. And he came up with a design that we believe was miles above all of the others. And I'll talk about the design of the nest boxes as we go. But he designed the barn owl box here. I'll talk about the design and the CBRP. We basically endorsed Steve's owl box design. Now, like I said, he died like 5 years ago, and but we are still evolving. The nest box designs are still evolving. We still have people working on those. So it's not like his design is stagnant and is no longer changing. We are still looking to figure out what is the best way to have a nest box design. Anyway, so Steve was very important to us. And he worked with students to collect data on the rodent take, which is the owls go out, they take a lot of rodents, and they come back, and one thing that they have left is all the skulls. And so he was right near UC Merced, so he was able to work with students, and they did science there. They would literally go and paw through all of the owl pellets, and they were able to find every skull that had been left in these owl boxes over an 8-week period. And this is all the skulls there. Now I'm going to read you all the information on that little piece of paper on the inside there, but that's a lot of skulls. And not only is it a lot of skulls that you see here of all these different kinds of rodents, but think about the fact that these rodents have a high fecundity rate. That's the birth rate, basically. How many new offspring come in because these rodents all have multiple broods a year, and they have many different offspring per brood, and so they really the growth rate of all of these different animals. So whenever you see one caught, don't forget it's not just that little guy, but it's all of the babies that don't get born that also makes a difference in this. So I want to read this. He wrote, "Barn owl cuisine. Have you ever wondered what is for dinner in a barn owl box for young owlets? Dinner consists of the following: 42% pocket gopher, 30% vole field mouse, 17% deer mice, 11% house mice, small birds, other small rats, kangaroo rats, moles, shrews, and young cottontail rabbits. The skulls you are looking at in this display are the top 3 prey items eaten by one family of young barn owls in an 8-week period. The following figures are the average number of prey items found in 44 nest boxes cleaned out after the owlets fled, so it's average, from the boxes in a diet study conducted from 1997 and 1998. 155 pocket gophers, that's 53 pounds, 113 voles, field mice, 14 pounds, 20 deer mice, 1 pound, that's 68 total pounds. The largest number of pocket gophers found in one box during the nesting season was 407, 140 pounds of pocket gophers for dinner. And if you go driving up I-5, you may notice that there are owl boxes up on poles along the orchards. And a lot of that is thanks to Steve Simmons, who was out there pointing out this stuff and how effective the barn owls are at dealing with rodents. So rodents are, I'm sorry, the barn owls are non-toxic, beautiful, and biological. But I want to emphasize non-toxic because really many of the things that we end up doing in order to get rid of rodents ends up putting chemicals into the environment. And the fewer chemicals we can put into the environment, the better off we are, because we tend to go and think, better living through chemistry, and we're better off just putting all these chemicals out there. We don't know what they do. We don't know if they have any contribution to cancers and autism and all these other ailments that humans seem to be getting on an increasing rate. But it would make sense that a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're putting herbicides and insecticides and things like that all over our lawns. They're washing into the rivers, and so the fewer things that we can do like that, the better. And not only are barn owls and all of these other cavity nesting birds that we can try and help out going to help us, but they aren't going to spread any diseases to us. So I mentioned before that there's a daytime uh, rodent control shift, and then there's the night crew. And it's important to think of both of them because they are really one team that are all working 24/7 trying to help humans. I mean, speaking anthropomorphically, but they really are paying our bills the way I like to put it. And unfortunately, the things that we are doing are actually harming them. So while they are trying to help us, we are harming them. And one of the biggest ways that we're doing that is by the use of anticoagulant rat poison. Now, what happens is, and rat poison, this anticoagulants have been around for a long time. When I was a teenager, I remember finding a bait station near my local creek, and I hit the roof, and I contacted the county and I said, "How could this be that you're putting poison next to our creek?" And they said, "Oh, don't worry, it's not really poison. It's just anticoagulants. It just makes it so that when they start bleeding, because they always cut themselves and things like that, then they simply bleed to death." And it's all nothing. When they go into the little bait station, that nothing goes in there that we don't want to go in there. It's all targeted and everything like that. Well, it turns out that that was all wrong, because the the truth is that when the rodents eat this bait, they start getting the whole thing with their blood stops clotting, and they become lethargic, and they become very easy for a predator to catch. And so they are caught by all manner of predators. It actually makes them more likely they're going to get caught. And once the predators catch them, then the now this poison goes into the predator, and it's something called bioaccumulation. If you ever remember something called DDT, DDT was also a bioaccumulant that what would happen is they would spray DDT, and then it would break down into something called DDE, which was eaten by various little organisms, and then those were eaten by fish, and then eventually the bald eagles would come down and catch the fish. And because now one fish is one thing, but the problem is every fish has this stuff in it, and it all accumulates in their tissues. And what was happening with the DDT was that it was affecting their eggs, and the eggs would break, and that reduced their reproductivity, and we almost lost the bald eagle. Luckily, we were able to stop DDT, and the bald eagle came back. Well, in this case, what we're dealing with is these anticoagulants that work just as well in the predators as they do in the rodents. And it's not just owls, it's all kinds of them. So this is a great horned owl that actually died seconds after this picture was taken. So I'm going to read something that was written. It's a story that was written by the rehabber who was caring for this owl. And part of it was there's a little narrative in here that was put by somebody else. When you put out poison to pets in harm, as well as many birds that will eat the dead or dying rodent, the poison you laid out to get rid of the mouse can also kill the neighbor's dog or cat, or a wonderful bird of prey like owls, hawks, and even bald eagles. Read this story, it is so powerful. I died today. I was found by a kind, Sweet woman who does wildlife rescue. I was so sick, I could barely open my eyes. She took me inside. Hopefully I can read this. She took me inside, cradling me in her warm arms and made me warm and comfortable. I opened my eyes and looked at her and thanked her for making my last few minutes as comfortable as possible. But I was too sick to keep fighting anymore. I had eaten a mouse that was poisoned and it made me very sick. I closed my yellow eyes for the last time and went somewhere else. Please, all I ask is never use poison to kill the mice. Poison kills owls like me. All I wanted was a mouse for dinner. I died today. So, so that happened there. There bald eagles, like they mentioned, bald eagles get hit by anticoagulant rat poison, and it's true, they do. And then this is P22. So P22 is a Southern California mountain lion famous for being walking around Griffith Park. And I mentioned that I have a whole host of links and stuff like that that I apparently cannot put into the chat, but we'll go ahead and email all these links out there. And it's going to include a lot of information, videos you'll be able to watch that will keep you going. Now, this is when P22 was suffering from mange. Luckily, they were able to bring P22 back. Unfortunately, later on, he did end up having to be put down. He was in really bad shape. He'd been hit by a car. He was full of anticoagulant rat poison. Basically, he was miserable. And that's the problem, is that we are making our predators miserable. In fact, it's not just P22. They found, because down in Southern California, they literally want to keep tabs on all of the big cats that are down there because they're all walking around basically urban areas. And so they collar them up with radio collars and stuff like that. And they found that 92% of all bobcats, 94% of all mountain lions, and 83% of all coyotes are walking around with large amounts of anticoagulant rat poison in them. So you can imagine, nobody prescribed these anticoagulants to them. That's just what they are. And you know that they're if you can imagine being lethargic all the time because of these medications that are in you, these poisons that are in you all the time, can you just imagine what that is like? And the anticoagulants knock out the predators, leaving nothing but prolific breeding rodents. And so I'm going to go more into that because that explains what's going on here. We always kind of assume that we are basically working with the predators when we are putting out anticoagulant rat poison, and that that simply we have the predators out there that are trying to help us, and then we have the poison that are simply trying to be like a supplement on top of it, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not what happens, because the rodent becomes a secondary bait station, which means all the predators, anything that feeds on it, gets this anticoagulant into their system. And so this is not really what we end up with. We end up with this. And I'm going to explain how this happens, where we don't have any predators to help us, and that forces us to go even more into the realm of using poisons. So we are simply doing things wrong and doing it in such a way that we are actually causing more harm than good. So part of the way this works is that there are R-selected species and K-selected species. Now, R-selected, that's, you could call it for rodents, but it's actually growth rate is what what this is all about, because the bottom of the food chain, all these rodents, they are very important, and they need to be able to respond back from fires or floods or something like that. They can't run very fast. They when there's a fire or something like that goes, their population gets knocked out. But because they literally have multiple broods a year and they have so many little pups per brood, every time they're literally able to come back super fast. So that's why you see the wild way in this video, in this photo, the wild way that their population just goes up and down and up and down. K-selected, that's what the predators are, and K-selected is its carrying capacity. And the reason it's carrying capacity is because, frankly, you don't want too many predators. A predator doesn't want too many predators. And if they go a little bit above that carrying capacity, somebody's gonna starve to death. So it always kind of hover right around the carrying capacity, whereas the R selected go way up and way down. So that explains why if you don't have predators, there's a problem because those rodents are going to go out of control. There's nothing left to stop them. So when you end up using the poison, you end up setting yourself for a never-ending use of poison, right? And that you're putting more and more poisons into the environment because we no longer have any predators helping us. And even when a predator does kind of wander in from the outside, a hawk comes in, as soon as they get in there, they start eating more bait from the bait stations, these secondary bait stations, more rodents, and they end up dying, and it's just a continuing cycle. So I found for those of you who might be interested, this is one of the links that I'm including. This man actually does a really good job of explaining what R selected and K selected are and why they're there. And he goes into a little bit more. It's only like an 8-minute video, but he goes into a lot of talking about why why you R selected versus K selected and how this all works. So California did pass a rodenticide ban, and we were there's an organization called Malibu was it pesticide no, rodenticide free Malibu or something like that, and another one called Rodents Are the Solution, and they fought hard in order to try and get a ban on rodenticide. And unfortunately, they got their ban, but the ban was really, but right before it was signed, it really got weakened. And one of the things was that uh, they they made it so that it only really was banned for, I think, residential people, and that those pest companies out there, who are the ones that are really complaining all the time about it, the the pesticide companies insisted that they be allowed to continue to use anticoagulant rat poison, and they do. So this is actually a newer article because California had passed one a couple of years ago, and we were all happy until we realized just how big a gaping hole had been left in it. But in this case, they have simply taken more anticoagulant rat poisons off the market. So there are still some out there. So the pest control companies still have something to work with. They just have a smaller list of rodenticides that they can use. So anyway, and you can imagine what the pesticide control companies are doing. They are literally could Los Angeles become the rattiest city in the United States? This kind of article is running rampant because what they're doing is they're trying to make it sound like we're all being really ridiculous by taking away rat poison. You know, they don't understand the need for it. Why are we taking away the rat poison? And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure everybody is at least aware of what the situation is. So then we come to the Ventura County Levee Rodent Control Study. Now, this is going to explain something, and that is, you know, obviously, when we're dealing with, in this case, these are people that have levees that they have to keep intact, and they can't use a less effective thing. As much as they might want to try and use raptors instead of poisons, the truth is that if the poison is more effective, then that's what they're going to do. but they still had people telling them, hey, you need to be using you need to get away from rodenticides. You need to use these, use the biological solutions. And so they decided, we're just gonna have to figure it out. We're gonna have to figure out if which one is more effective, because at least we'll be able to tell them this is why we're using poisons. So what they did was they took 6,000 feet, that's a little bit more than a mile, in one area of the levee, and they took 6,000 feet in another, and they basically made them into test sites. And in one area, they put rodenticide-based stations, basically what they always do, right? They call it a control site because, oh, this is what we always do. And then the other site, no more rodenticide. They used 14 20-foot raptor perches. I'll talk about those. One barn owl nest box and one red-tailed hawk nesting platform. And it was great because they started going in there and using these things. And this is the raptor perches, just so you're aware what we're talking about. You've seen a red-tailed hawk sitting up on top of a light lamp post, like a street light, because what they're doing is they're hunting, but they don't have to wait. They can rest and they can watch, and as soon as they see something, they can go run down and jump on it, right? And so it's a place for them to easily, that they can't be seen. They're not in motion, and so it's a good place for them to hunt from. And so most of what they did was putting these up so that the when the uh, when the rodents were out there, they didn't see it coming, basically. So so they used all of these. They had a barn owl box, and of course that meant that they were able to use both the day crew and the night crew of rodent control. Now this is the results, and the blue is the raptor site, and the orange is the control site. And if you look at the numbers on this, the raptors blew the poisons out of the water. It's not even close. Now there was one period there in April where there was a little bit close, and the rodenticides is a little bit better, but in general, they just really clean the raptors just clean the clock of all the poisons. And then it got to the point where basically they're like, do we even believe this? How is this possible? We must have made a mistake. They said the area that we had the pesticide, the rodenticides, we must have used that one particular area must be really bad for what they're basically thinking is that they needed to actually they should have used, I don't know, you know what I'm saying. um, they decided that they were going to pull all of the rat poison from the other area and put all the raptor poles and things like that in this area to see if it made any difference, and it did. It knocked all those numbers back down to what they were finding at the other site. In other words, there was no doubt that the raptors did a better job than the control. So in the end, the conclusions were 50% fewer squirrel burrows in areas where perches were installed. And I think when they said 50%, they used other numbers elsewhere, which are even higher. The bait is ineffective when adjacent to more attractive crops. Now, what that meant was that apparently there was some farm that was nearby the levees, and when the farm had a lot of fruit and things like that on it, then rather than eat the rat bait, which I guess it must taste okay, but the fruit tastes really good, and so all of the ground squirrels ran over and started eating all the fruit, and they left all the bait station alone. The funny thing was they still went over and did all kinds of tunneling in the levee. They simply didn't eat any of the bait. So, and then estimated annual savings of more than $7,400 per mile for levy mile. And the facilities that are adjacent to natural areas will make good candidates for the Raptor program. So, looking at that last sentence, I think the what we have to remember is that this is one situation, and it's not always going to be necessarily the same way elsewhere. But it is important to understand that at least in this situation, the Raptors really clean the clock of the poisons, and that's probably true to some extent in many other situations. So one of the let's see, and then the 13, well, afterwards they said, okay, enough of the rodenticide, and they decided to go with expanding this Raptor program. 13 miles of channels and levees, and 19 dams are currently protected by 150 perches and 16 owl nesting boxes. So the this is the actually the photo I showed you at the beginning. I didn't want to show you that they said hawks and owls beat rodent poisons for protecting the dams and the levees from squirrel burrows, and it was an easy way to deal with it because, of course, the all you had to do was count squirrel burrows, and that's what they were trying to prevent. So it's not always going to be so easy to figure out which one is doing which. And I also have to point out something, and that is if you look at, remember that the this right here now, as clear as day that the Raptors did a good job. The truth is that it never got down to zero. The numbers never got down to zero. They were always going to have to come back and deal with the holes. And the reason that's important to keep in mind is the fact that it's really easy to forget that when we see the rats, even though we're not using poisons, people are going to sit there and say, oh, well, the reason that we're seeing all these is because we're not using poisons. So we have to keep in mind that all the time that the poisons didn't outcompete the raptors. So anyway, this is all summarized in really nicely in a 20-minute video that you can find on YouTube. And remember, I mentioned that I have this list of links. One of the links is this video of the Ventura County staff to presenting to the Malibu City Council this whole study, and they explain the whole thing. And you just come away from it just thinking, you know, wow, they really, they really found something out about this. So Steve Simmons has demonstrated the effectiveness of barn owls in rodent control, and Ventura County has demonstrated the effectiveness of barn owls over rodenticide. But what does this mean for your home? Because obviously you're not going to have a red-tailed hawk living in your living room or in the garage or wherever it is you expect that the mice are going to be. So what are we going to do about it then? Well, Raptors as a Solution is this organization that has been trying to get people to go away from rodenticide poisoning. And one of the things that they've done is they put together a series of these brochures here, that these flyers, pamphlets, whatever you want to call it, that has information on what you can do around your house in order to reduce the number of rodents that are inside. And so let's look at some of these. To cut branches back from 3 feet away from the roof, rip out that ivy, do not accumulate trash, use wire mesh or hardware cloth under the porches that extends partially into the ground. Rats can enter your home through an opening the size of a dime. Seal all holes in the roofs, walls, foundation, crawl spaces, and sheds. Seal openings around pipes, cables, and electrical wires that enter walls and foundations. Elevate that chicken coop by 18 inches. Cap plumbing vent stacks with hardware cloth. If you feed birds, feed small amounts at a time and bring the feeders in at night. Clean up that fallen seed. Check the garage and shelves for storage sheds for evidence of rats. Consider using a non-toxic fertility control product like Contrapest to decrease the rat numbers. And sticky traps or glue boards, they cause horrific suffering, and other animals get caught in them, including songbirds. And then now up the top there, snap traps in the open landscape, they can maim and harm other animals. They aren't actually saying don't use snap traps. What they're saying is be careful with how they're used. And they specifically talked about putting them out in the open landscape, and they don't want you to do that. I use them in my garage, but I make sure that the dogs can't get to them and stuff like that. And then obviously rodenticides, rat poison kills birds and wildlife, not just rats. When a hawk or owl or bobcat eats a poisoned rat, they too become very ill and perish of secondary poisoning. Rat poisons also poison your dog or cat. And then also okay to use electronic traps only in safe locations like the Raticator or other rat zapper. And I know that there's also electronic repellents, which you put them in and they basically make noises that apparently scare everything away. Cayenne pepper sprinkled on rat trails to deter them. Dry ice in rat burrows and A24 trap by automatic trap, and that's a picture of the A24 down below. That I've never actually used. I think pretty much any of that, but they said it. Rodents are a solution. Raptors a solution. They said that that this is the stuff. So I'm gonna assume that it's all a good idea. And that is just the residential flyer. So that they've got flyers for all these other different things here. And remember I said I've got this list of links. The link to the website that goes to these flyers is on that list. So this is the American Barn Owl. Now, this is the first time we're going to try and see if you can actually hear anything, because I could not get the when I tried to share it, I tried to make it so you could hear through hear what the everything that was in my audio, and it just isn't working. So hopefully you can hear this barn owl sound. So if you didn't hear it, that was a screech. Oddly enough, screech owls do not screech, but barn owls do. And so we'll be talking about that screech and what it might mean for having them in your backyard later on. This is Lee Pauser. Now I mentioned Steve Simmons has passed on, but Lee studied under Steve, and he visited him many times, and the two of them got along really well. And so Lee basically has been had picked up the gauntlet and has gone forward. And so when I was talking about that we were kind of still looking, still evolving the Steve's designs, it's basically Lee that is doing it, because Lee is a master craftsman and he's able to do a really good job of making nest boxes and things like that. And so he's been looking, and he's a very inventive kind of guy. He's basically an inventor, and he is continuing to look at how the nest box designs can be improved. So this is Stack Natural Area, and the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I was asked to come over and help them choose an area to put a barn owl box. And I've gotten a lot better at barn owl boxes, and how to where to put them and stuff like that, based on the experiences of things like this. So I here we are and by the way, Stack is an old it was a part of a golf course that was closed down, happened to be right next to the river, and so they turned it into a natural area. They've been putting in the native flower beds and oak trees and things like that. And so they've really been it's now a great place to go birding and all this stuff. It's really cool. And they wanted to put in a barn owl box, but where to put it? So I chose that area right there. And I thought, then I wrote to Lee and I said, "Hey, Lee, we're talking about putting in a nest box for barn owls at Eulastack." And I asked him what his opinion was. And so what Lee did was he went on and looked at Google Earth, and he noticed something right off the bat. Now, this is where I wanted to put the barn owl box. He saw that Levi Stadium. Now, one thing about Levi Stadium, it is bright, and it is, and so just having Levi Stadium nearby means you have to be careful where you're going to put a barn owl box, because they don't want to be in a lit area. That's the whole point of being there at night. They want to be in the dark. And so if I put a box within clear eyesight of these lights, that's a problem. And so my first tip for you is check the site out at night. You're talking about putting it in for night animals. We want to check to see if the area makes sense to put it at night. During the day, yes, at night as well. This is another area where we have a barn owl box. Now, I had nothing to do with putting this box up, and whether or not it was a good idea, well, I'll let you decide, then I'll tell you. um, so it's kind of hard to see, but it's way over there in the back. This is a community garden, and so you can imagine there are quite a few people that come through there. Every now and then they have little lunches. They have picnic tables and stuff like that. So during the day they have quite a bit of activity. Now we talked about light, because light is a bad thing, and there are street lights. This area is actually fairly bright. So just for that reason alone, it's not a great place to put a barn owl box. But then when you look at the activity level that is around the area, then it just becomes really clear this is not a great place for a barn owl box. Okay, and I will point out that what the way that Lee put it was, you want little activity during the day and no activity at night. And the kind of activity that I think that they will get along with just fine is, for example, along a hiking trail, right? So you're walking along and you're within maybe 30 feet of the barn owl box, and you just keep right on walking, and they don't seem to care about that. And then, but at night, nothing. You want no activity at all. So imagine that you were working in this garden, and the street, you've been working all day, but the street lights come on, and you decide to go ahead and have a beer, and you're over at the table and stuff like that. Well, the problem is that the barn owl, they don't want anyone really seeing where that they're going in, so they're going to wait until you're not looking so they can go into their box. And that's a problem, because you can actually affect how the babies are fed, and that's a real issue, because literally the kids could be starving because the parents are shy about going to the box while you're around. Now, there are cases where the barn owls, they just don't care, or they go ahead and go in anyway, things like that. That's fine, but they're kind of taking a chance, and the reason they might end up doing that is because they're desperate, and desperate is a word that describes a lot of why different birds use nest boxes that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to use, because I'll tell people, when I'm talking about bluebirds or any other bird, I'll tell people this is what you want to do, and they'll say, "No, no, no. I did the exact opposite of that. I ended up with a massive hole on the front of my box. It was much bigger than the bird needed, and it went in there." I've actually had tree swallows use barn owl boxes. What it's called is desperation. They couldn't find anything else. So, just as I say for bluebirds, I will say for the barn owls, you need to not consider the fact that they're doing it. You know what's safe. You need to think about their safety, because barn owls are not the top of the food chain. They're not the apex predator. And there are animals that will, bobcats, raccoons, all kinds of stuff that will crawl up there and get into the box. Okay. So you want to make sure when you're doing this stuff that you're taking them into account. That's why we like Steve Simmons' design, because he looked at that entrance hole size and he did not make the entrance hole so big because it hasn't been a problem so far. So entrance hole size is a real important thing, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Entrance hole size on all of these different boxes are all based upon the size of the bird you're trying to go in. And so the little chickadee box that's at the very front is it's going to have an entrance that's an inch and a quarter, maybe even an inch and an eighth. The bluebird needs an inch and a half. These other ones are all based upon the size of the bird because we don't want anything larger. Well, there may have to be competition between other birds, but we don't want anything that shouldn't have to get in there. We don't want them to be able to get into the box, and that includes for the barn owl. And then you want to look at dimensions. Dimensions are important because remember how many birds might be fledged in there, or might be hatching in there. And I have if I end up with any questions, it may have something to do with the size of the box. Well, the reason we use this size of box is because the average number of birds that was found to be using the box was about 5.5, something like that. The number of birds that we that were the average brood that was in there, and so unfortunately they can go up. I've seen sizes as much as 9 eggs, but I don't think that the mama bird is going to lay 9 eggs in this box. I think she's going to realize the box is too small. I'm certainly hoping that. But these boxes are also kind of heavy, and people tend to be putting them up by themselves. And so we feel that it is important that the box be liftable and put up there. We don't have telehandlers, we don't have forklifts, we don't have scissor lifts or anything like that. Most people don't. And so most people are going to be erecting a pole and then carrying it up on a ladder and then holding it. And we want the box to be the way we figure it is we're also we don't want to get sued for deliberately trying to make something so heavy that when you dropped it on the person that was underneath us, you end up killing them. We don't want that. So we do have a limit on how heavy we want our boxes. So for that reason, that's one of the reasons why we're fighting for this design. We think it's a good design. Drainage is important because you want any water that comes in to go out, and these, unlike the bluebirds, which their hole is pretty small, these holes are big enough that they're going to allow in rain. You try and make it so they're faced away from the rain, but it doesn't always work because rain can sometimes come from unexpected directions. And then ventilation. So ventilation is important too because and we're especially I've got the painting. We're finding out that it can get really hot in these boxes. More on that in a little bit. You need to be able to clean it out. So not just necessarily having a clean out like this, but you might want to be able to open up the top so you can go in there and scoop everything out. Cleaning these boxes out can be a real pain. So it's important that you have an easy way to clean it out. In this particular case, I think this box looks like you can't open the top, and that's not how I would really want it designed. I'd want to have the clean out on the top, but I also want you to be able to open up the top. And then no perch. Now, I will say this: if you have this perch on there, you will come out along and find all of the little babies lined up on that perch. So that does not necessarily mean that it's the safest way to do things. So most of the boxes, we don't make boxes of purchase. Every now and then somebody will put a perch on there. I don't recommend it because we believe that it helps the predators to get in there. And another thing is notice how there is literally a shade with a gap, an air gap over the top, a shade with the air gap over the side. And the reason that's important is because we are actually finding, just like with the ventilation, we are finding that it is actually hotter inside the box than it is on the outside. So as temperatures start getting hotter and hotter, that's a problem. And so it's kind of counterintuitive. I always assumed that it was colder inside a box than it was on the outside. It's dark usually, so I would expect it to be hotter, hotter outside than it is inside. It's not the case. It's actually hotter inside. But if you have kind of a shadow structure up above, then that ends up really putting it more into shade, and that will cool things down. And white, painting it white for heat protection. Now, um, we also a lot of times we're talking about painting nest boxes white that are used for bluebirds, and for the same reason, trying to cool things down inside the box. The problem with the bluebirds is that they need to be able to camouflage against the front of the nest box. And so, what I will tell people to do is to go and do something that's going to camouflage them right around the entrance hole, so that when they go up there, they aren't so easy to see. But with barn owls, they're in there all day, and that's really when it matters. At night, it isn't necessarily so easy to see them against the box. And then, oh, height off the ground. So it used to be that you were told that they had to be 20 feet off the ground, and 20 feet off the ground is high. That means that not only do you need the pole to be 20 feet from there to the maybe the top of the nest box, but you also need to have it into the ground a certain distance, and that means the pole has to be really long. And one of Steve Simmons' decisions was he said, "I'm getting old. I'm in my 70s, and I need to figure out if when they said 20 feet up, does it really have to be 20 feet?" And so he ended up bringing them down to 8 feet. Now, some of the caveats, remember, a lot of them were on private property, and they were in orchards and things like that. So there weren't that many snakes or things like that. Weren't that many predators of that kind. When you lower them, it does make them easier to get to by predators or vandals or whatever. So when you're considering how high to put it, you want to think about where you are doing it. If it's in an area where you don't expect a lot of predation, you don't expect cats, you don't expect any kind of problems, you can make it 8 feet. That's what he ended up doing because he wanted to be able to put his ladder up against there and go up there, band all those birds, and be done. He even got to the point where he was putting a bluebird box mounted on the side of the barn owl box, and the reason he was able to do that was because nocturnal and diurnal. They come out at different times. They did not interfere with each other at all. And he literally had pictures from the top of active barn owl nests and active bluebird nests at the same time. And shavings. So you need to have shavings on the bottom. Don't have just a clean um, empty floor. You want to have shavings. And I told you that it was important that we consider predation. And this is a demonstration. This is one of the photos Lee took when he was coming along looking at his boxes, and he realized that there was a bobcat sitting on top of one of his boxes. Now, I don't think this bobcat could have gotten in there, but if it was a raccoon, it probably would have been a little more agile and able to do that. Luckily, he has a partition, which is the whole point of this particular slide. But it's important to keep in mind that they are, like I said, not the apex predator, and something is out there trying to kill them. And those chicks are the owlets are hunted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the predators don't stop. So this is actually a video showing the partition. I don't know if you can hear it. You hear clicking of the beak and hissing. That hissing was all coming from the baby owlets, and as was the clicking. I don't think the parent wasn't in there. I think that there were so many chicks in there. So the uh, you can see the partition. So when you come in that entrance, the partition is over to the right, and if you can't get your head in, then that partition is going to protect the outlets. So that, and even if they can get their head kind of far a little further in, but they're not able to get to the outlets because of that partition. So the partition is really cool as a way of protecting the chicks. Um, and annual maintenance, basically, when we do the bluebird nest boxes or any of the smaller ones, the astro flycatcher or the house wren, Bewick's wren, um, tree swallow, violet green swallow, all of those other nest boxes, we ask you to go and check them out during the nesting season. Check them out once a week to kind of keep an eye at what part of the cycle you're in, so you know what to expect each week, and you can kind of see when there's predation or things like that. Um, it doesn't really work that way with these larger format boxes because the birds are easier to scare away, so you don't want to go and do a lot of what we check them with cameras. With all that, when you saw those barn owls in the box, that was just a camera. It wasn't like somebody was sticking their head into the box. There was a camera that came over and looked at them, and the camera went away. So obviously they didn't like that, but so that's the kind of monitoring we would do. We don't do it every week. We do it probably we might do it a couple times during um, over a month or two or something like that. And then the rats and mice and all these different things are brought in there, and you can just imagine what the floor of these barn owl boxes turn into, because they are full of all this detritus, all the skulls and the different bones and the fur and just all kinds of stuff that is now all over the bottom. So it's nice to be able to go and clean it out once a week and put in nice fresh shavings for them to have for the year. um, and the bads. I told you that there were some reasons why you wouldn't necessarily want a barn owl box right next to your living quarters, right? And part of it has to do with the fact that they're loud, and you heard how loud the barn owl was. They scream, and so I know that we had I've got some relatives up in Santa Rosa, and they had some people that were living in a actually near a barn, and the owls were in the barn, and the owls were just scream like that all night long, and it drove the people that were living there crazy. So we ended up moving the owl box to a different building, but they are loud, and it's a problem. So you don't want to deliberately invite them into your yard because they have a long nesting season and they could be there for a long, long time. And then they're messy. So when they're carrying all the dead gophers or whatever, they're carrying it up there. Sometimes they drop them, and so you end up with they won't go down for them, so they'll just leave the dead animal at the bottom of the nest box, and so you end up with just all this stuff, this again detritus, just hanging out outside the bottom of it. So it's not exactly a clean place. Obviously, this stuff all gets cleaned up by nature one way or another, but it isn't like you want that in your backyard either. So, and then I have a box on the ground story. This is a story that I heard. Unfortunately, I believe I read it actually, and therefore I can't really tell you its veracity, but it makes sense as a story. And the story was that there was a man who had learned about barn owl boxes, and he got all into the idea of having barn owl boxes um, on ranches all around. And he ended up making barn owl boxes, and he would go around and give them to his friends. And he said, "Hey, you've got to go and put this out in your little back 40 area out there." And one of his friends accepted the box. Thank you very much, and he put it on a table out in his backyard. He was like, I'm I'm not gonna. I'll get to this sooner or later," and he never really got to it. And months later, he he comes out in his backyard and he looks over and he realizes, I really should do something with this barn owl box. And he goes over and he picks it up, and a barn owl flew out of it. And what that box demonstrates, again, I mentioned desperation. It mentions desperation. Where are the barn owls supposed to hang out at night, or during the day? And as I said, barn owls do us a lot of good, and so we want to have them around. If not necessarily right next to our house, but you certainly want to have them not that far away from your house, because it would be nice to have barn owls, or any kind of owl hanging out in the area. So it's something to keep in mind, that and I know maybe I'm sending mixed signals here, but that they're important to have around. If you've got a good location for them, then it's certainly a good idea, I think. And then all this is all part of the habitat, right? Um, and the idea is you have the food, space, cover, water, shelter, basically everything that an animal needs to survive and reproduce. And that, of course, includes places to raise their young. And this is a plate that I always show everybody, for, whether I'm talking about bluebirds or what, because what we're talking about is incomplete habitat. If you have an area that has rats or mice or ground squirrels or whatever, and you don't have the area for them to nest in, then you don't have what it takes in order to give them everything they need in order to survive and reproduce. So it's like having it's called the limiting factor. The limiting factor is the thing that they have the least of, and if that thing is at zero, the carrying capacity, the number of animals that can be there is zero. So by putting up a nest box for a barn owl, then you end up raising that number. So the important thing, remember, I talked about, you want an area with the appropriate activity level, day and night. You want to have have it in a place where, when the place gets strewn around with dead animals and when there's loud noises, that it doesn't upset people nearby. And so there are all these different things that, but they're important to have around. So in a park setting, or in an area where there's hiking and things like that going by, there are a lot of places where you might be able to come up with the idea that this is a good place to put a barn owl box. Now here's another one. I'm not even. I don't even know if everybody's hearing these sounds or not. Great horned owl. So there was the one call and then an answer. I don't know if you heard any of it, but it's obviously a hoot owl, right? And depending on different areas, their call kind of varies a little bit, but it's always kind of the hoot, like hoot hoot hoot, or whatever. They it's all relatively the same. They're big owls. They prey on barn owls. So if you have great horned owls in your area already, then don't put in a barn owl box, because you're just setting the barn owl up for failure, because you're going to have these basically hunters around, which are already doing the same thing anyway. They're already going after rodents and things like that. So there's really no reason to worry about how to attract in barn owls if you got great horned owls, because you've already got some uh, some owl service going, right? This is a type of platform that you might use for an owl. But remember, I mentioned that I had links, and that I was going to provide you with some information in an email. One of the links is to a video I found, and it was a very short video. This was taken over in Florida, but it's very interesting about great horned owls. And what this man who made the video has done is he has these platforms that are on the side of the tree. Now, one thing you don't see is the fact that this is kind of a forested area. It's kind of a woodsy area. And so it's actually a really good place for an owl to be able to fly around without really being seen very well. It's going to be easier for them to kind of get away, and it's not so easy for people to see them. And when he first walked up, what he had was, you could see the little 2x4s that are coming out at this level, that are kind of hooked around the tree. And then he's got a box that is made of, looks like maybe more 2x4s or 1x6s or something. And then within that, what you don't see in this photo is that there is hardware cloth along the bottom. And when he first went up there, he said, "Oh, we're going to get ready for our nesting season for the great horned owl." And then he ended up stacking up all of these little sticks and things like that in there to make it so that it was kind of a nest for the great horned owl. So again, the link will be in the description, or the link will be in the. Actually, I probably should put it in the description, but the link will be in this email that is sent to you. And so this is another. I think it's pretty good, actually. And then here's another one. Again, I was going to play it, hoping that you can hear it. So they have kind of a trill call, and they are a cute little owl. They have kind of little ears, certainly more than the next owl you'll see. And they are they like to hang around oak trees. So if you're going to put a nest for them, you would put it into an oak tree, basically. The nest, actually, I think I got a picture of. Yeah, there's. So here's a type of nest box you would use for a screech owl. This is actually the same box you would use for an American kestrel also, but the American kestrel box would be put on a pole out in the field. So so this is a screech owl box up in an oak tree, and that's where they would like it. And then I got some cute. There's a photo of a mama screech owl with her little babies, and then this is actually a video of some babies that was taken by Lee Pauser. They're not hissing like the barn owls were. They're just kind of saying, "Go away, please." And this is the northern saw-whet owl. Now, while the western screech owl was an oak lover, the northern saw-whet owl is more of a conifer lover. So pines and other conifers. There's a lot of different kind of conifers that are out there. So any of those. And by the way, when it comes to these types, this is like the most common, but don't hold me to it if you find them in a different tree than I'm saying that they're found in. So northern saw-whet owl has kind of a toot call, and then they also have a wail. So the wow. meow kind of thing. And then there is a video that I'm gonna link you to also that is it's called uh, Saw-Whet Owls by Ken, I think it's Soban. I'll forget the right name for him. And he gave this presentation to the Mendocino Audubon Society, and it's a wonderful video that tells you all about northern saw-whet owls, and about nesting for them. And then burrowing owl. Let's see if this. I think this one's kind of quiet. Whoops. Let me try this again. So anyway, that was the burrowing owl call. Burrowing owls are actually fairly easy to see, and the cool thing about these is these are in man-made nesting structures, and this is what they're shaped like. So basically, you end up with those little concrete structures, and then there are corrugated tubes that come out and go down to a Christie box that's installed in the ground, and they're able to. They usually have a way of opening it up from the top so they can look into the Christie box, because that's where the chamber is basically. And what they've done is they take over old squirrel holes. This is Lee Pauser. He helps with rehoming barn owls too. So they will end up putting them into some of the nest boxes in order to get them to be able to get them to be raised. And so it's pretty cool. This is how Lee monitors the nest boxes by putting a camera on the end of a pole and sticking the pole in. And this is actually those are actually northern flickers. They're not owls. Sorry. Um, and those flickers actually make really weird noises. Some of the other videos have them making even freakier noises. So here is www.cbrp.org is our website, and there are a lot of now. I went back and I was looking to figure out how much of this stuff I have on owls. The truth is that what I basically have is information from Lee on. One of the things I'm going to be putting in this link list is Lee did an hour for SFBBO, which is San Francisco Bay Bird Observatory, and it was called Birdie Hour. Talk 19 Seasons of Nest Box Monitoring by Lee Pauser. So that tells you how much he's certainly been at it longer than I have. And part two was all about the larger format nest boxes. So the first part is about the smaller ones, and the second part is about the larger ones. I'm giving you the larger, the second part, but you should be able to find the first part if you want to watch that too. And so I was gonna, I think, given that we're like at 11:20, right? Oh, and it's probably time.
Yes, I am here.
Okay. I think it's probably time to. Am I right that we're there? We're like.
We were going till 11:30, but did you have some slides that you still wanted to talk about,
Well,
or?
I mentioned that if I had extra time, I was gonna look real quick at cbrp.org. But
Okay, let's answer a few of folks' questions and then pop over there.
right.
That shouldn't take too long.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a question from Todd. What is the best time of year to set up or clean out owl box?
October. October is unfortunate. They have a really long nesting season, longer than any of the other bird. Well, I mean, basically these larger birds, whether I think they're bald eagles or whatever, these are all going to have really long nesting season, and they could be out there in much harsher conditions than many other birds. So when it comes to the best time, I what I end up using, it gets around to October, and I think, okay, now I got to go clean out my owl box, and then it gets to be the end of October, and I think, oh, I still haven't done it yet, and then I generally
Mm,
like November 7th or something like that. So
okay,
so, but basically October is
October.
the answer. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a couple questions that involve owls with other critters. So there is somebody who has a bunny rabbit, and she's wondering if during the day she needs to worry about hawks. The bunny weighs 7 pounds.
About she's worried about foxes.
No, I'm sorry. It's about actually, you know what? Let's stick with boxes. Let's stick on this topic. We'll go to that. David asks, is it better or worse to put an owl box in an existing tree?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Because uh, the barn owl boxes that we've been put up generally kind of are on like poles. Um,
Mm,
and that doesn't mean that you can't put one in a tree if it's got lots of like there are trees that have a really open trunk going up, and you can go ahead and put it on the trunk. Um, One thing is that it is easier for a raccoon to climb a tree than it is to have them climb a pole. So you can make it really easy for the predators to get to the box if you're putting it on a tree. So that's kind of the trade-off.
so
So
that's the whole reason it's recommended to use a pole.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So I would um, I'm it in some cases you say, well, I can either put up a box or I can't, and
Hmm.
I can put it on a tree or I can't put up a box. So
Hmm.
you have to wonder if what is basically the situation. I'm glad I.
Okay, and then we've got a couple more questions about the sort of same idea. Um, this is not about boxes. This is someone who's saying, I want to attract owls, but I also have ducks. Do I have to choose? Her ducks are inside at night. Are they okay? I think there's some people worrying that if they attract owls, that things like that are out during the day, like if they have a pet rabbit or a pet duck, if there's a danger to them.
Well, I mean, I would certainly hate to have to say no and then have
Right.
you know. Um,
But
Unfortunately,
essentially the owls come out as soon as it's dark, correct? So if you've got your animals
yeah, but
inside.
the thing is that the you got hawks out there too, so
Yeah,
it's not like the animal is all that safe.
right. Okay.
So
So if they think there might be a risk, then
yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, there probably is a risk if you're just having them, out there. Certainly, when we put our rabbit out, we always try and put a cover over it so that the hawks can't get through them, because unfortunately, it's one of those things where they will come down, grab them, and be off with them. So
okay.
um, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad idea to bring in the owl, but it certainly is a good idea to protect whatever you don't want the owl to get. But in this case, I would say I'd be more worried about hawks.
Okay. Yeah, that was what I was thinking because the hawks are the ones
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
Here's another good question. Do bats and great horned owls coexist in the same area? I know that great horned owls are the apex predators and prey on barn owls. How about bats and great horned owls?
It's funny because I have my nest box trail up at a county park, and one of the things we decided to do was to put up a barn owl box, and
Hmm.
the Boy Scouts had put up literally 6 bat boxes, and they sat there for years. And the when we were trying to figure out what to do with the barn owl box, the park ranger said, "Why don't we just go ahead and put it on one of the poles that had the bat box, because the bat boxes aren't doing anything, and we went all this trouble to put up these poles. Let's just go ahead and put it on the bat box." So I literally went up and we put the barn owl box on the bat box, and then I go like a week later and I'm checking the barn owl box, and all of a sudden all of the bat boxes started chattering, and it turned out that they had moved into the bat boxes after the barn owl box had been put up. And we're trying to figure out, why is that? Was it that they saw the barn owl box and said, "Oh, look," and they come in to examine it, and then, "Whoa, look at this." So that was weird. So um, unfortunately, I can't say that it is. I can't say that it's a great idea because they are both nocturnal, but in general, bats should be. They should be able to get away. Set it up correctly. See if you can set it up in such a way that they won't. Um, that you're at least not allowing the barn owl to go up and latch onto the bat box or something like that. But
Okay.
but based on my experience so far, it should be fine.
All right, great. And then another question, um, would a barn owl box work for the great horned owl? And then is there a resource for a good template to use to build one, and what height?
But the template for the great horned owl.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, I mentioned that the great horned owl is a platform nester. Maybe I didn't actually use that term, but the great horned owl is a platform nester. Um, so
Okay, so no box for the
yeah, so
great horned owl.
no box. They won't use boxes. The barn owl will. And if you go, the links that I send you are gonna literally have a video that literally shows you what the platform looks like that a great horned owl would use, and then you how they kind of prepared it, and and it's only a couple of minutes, and it really should give you an idea of what the great horned owls do. Um, and so yeah, that's one of the reasons why literally I concentrated on barn owls, is because barn owls are and great horned owls both are hard hitters on the rodents, but the barn owls are really the ones that we can kind of bring in with these nest boxes, whereas the great horned owl are not. I don't think they're so easy to bring in. Let's put it that way.
Okay, another question from someone who has a 1/6 of an acre that has oak trees around the edges. Is there a way to know if there is enough room for an owl box?
Well, that sounds like enough room. You say a sixth, 1/6 or 6 acres?
0.6 of an acre.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought you said 6 acres.
No, 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 0.6.
0.6 acres. Yeah, it sounds like a backyard.
It's a little small.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, the problem is that they're going to be loud and they're going to make a mess in your backyard. Um, so I don't know that that's you. See if you have bluebirds or um, wrens or tree swallows, violet green swallows, or chickadees, or there's so many different cavity nesting birds that might be in your backyard. And with oak trees, they would be. Um, what you might consider is putting up a Western screech owl box, because but it would be based on, you still have to have hunting grounds nearby. And they're not so concentrated on rodents. They have a wider variety of things that they eat, including insects of one kind or another and stuff like that. So um, it would be interesting. If you have any questions, you can send. Actually, I
I'll
should put,
send everybody your email as
yeah,
well, because then there may be some questions I missed, like somebody was asking what entrance direction, like what direction should the entrance of the box
yeah.
face?
These larger format boxes are going to have a larger entrance, which is going to allow in more water, and so I would definitely point it away from the rain. Um, so that's I mean, I don't want to say east or west or south or north, because I'm
Or
afraid.
maybe some sort of a covering over the top, like a little, what would you
I think,
call it?
I think one of the photos of a barn owl box I showed did have actually a little overhang, but
Yeah, like a little, mhm.
yeah, but I don't know that that was going to do that much
How
protection.
much that's gonna stop the
Yeah,
rain.
yeah. So,
Okay, okay.
and they don't tend. I mean, unless you're going to have, like, remember I had a shade structure. Maybe if you have a shade structure, it goes further out.
Mhm.
But
All
uh,
right, well, if you want to go ahead and share your screen and talk to folks about
yeah,
that.
um let me get this real quick. Uh, Sorry, it's taking a second. Okay. Um,
Hmm.
okay, so what I was going to do was to show you that this, then you can see the Bluebird Recovery Program website here, right? And you can see the
Yes,
web.
I can see it.
Good
Sorry, I
deal.
was coughing. I didn't want
It's okay.
to. Okay.
So we have actually a lot of resources on here. At this point, most of them are kind of bluebird specific, or at least bluebird size birds specific. Um, and we have various different videos that are available, including this one, and which I'm not sure how long that one is, but I can tell you that if you go first, you go to Nestbox Trail under Getting Started, and it has a whole bunch of different information about what this is a lot of information if you're good at reading. A lot of information, answering a lot of questions, and then actually this is all. I think these just kind of point further down. Talk about hanging boxes and gives all kinds of information there. Georgette and I actually wrote most of this. So, and then if you go up to the nest box monitoring, remember I said that for bluebird boxes, you want to watch them like once a week during the nesting season. And this right here will answer a lot of questions about what to bring with you, why and how you monitor nest boxes, cleaning and repairing nest boxes, how to resolve challenges, and things like that. And then we have a lot of other videos. Now, this one right here is beginning with bluebirds. It's only like 10 minutes long. It's based on the Michigan 8 minutes, how to be a nest box monitor in 8 minutes. We just made it like 10 minutes long, but basically it goes over in a very abbreviated fashion how to be a nest box monitor. Then this one right here is a two-part. Each one is 1 hour, two-part training. So it's 2 hours of training on how to be a nest box monitor. It's very thorough. Talks about all kinds of different things. So again, this is all for bluebird-sized nest boxes. And remember, I mentioned Lee Pauser. I'm going to be giving you the YouTube link for this second hour of the Birdie Hour Talk, 19 Seasons of Nest Box Monitoring, that Lee did, because there he talks about the larger nest boxes, which includes wood ducks and screech owls and um, uh, the barn owls and just all the larger birds, American kestrels, things like that. The other one, it talks about all these other smaller songbird size cavity nesters. And then here, this video right here, Lee describes how to monitor hanging nest boxes. So he'll talk about why you'd want to do hanging nest boxes and things like that. And then Melanie Truen, our Yolo County coordinator, actually talked to Wild Farm Alliance, and she did a presentation called Nest Box Nuts and Bolts at Wild Farm Alliance's Field Day at Blue Heron Farm. So those are all videos you can watch, record and repeat. Report is basically when you go out and you're looking. We do ask you kind of take notes as to what you see. This is all talks about report forms and things like that, and how to report to us. And then resources includes tips for beginners, including Soul's activity book and getting to know bluebirds, just all kinds of things there, um, including different kinds of worksheet forms, and then news of all of our newsletters from. But we've been around since like 1994. So anyway, it's a lot to find on our website. We're 11:38, so we can't say that we're cutting too short.
Yes, looks like we're doing great. And Mike, I just want to thank you so much. Your passion, your enthusiasm, and all the hard work you do is important and I think inspirational to everybody watching. Um, so if people want to get more in touch with you, there will be links below the video to all your information and ways that people can become involved in helping their local raptors.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
And thanks to everybody for watching. And if you aren't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.